I had this on mute, but if there's people that want to chat, I think you can type in the chat and I'll be able to see it if you have questions. What I'm making is called quilling, and it's basically the art of bending paper is the best way I can explain it. And a lot of it is based off of coils. What I'm making here is I'm using a half length of paper and I'm just making some small tight coils, which is part of the cross when we're done. I have the recipe for the cross here, and then after this video you'll be able to see it done, but I'll also post pictures of it so that you can see what it looks like. This is just Elmer's school glue, and you just use so little of it. You don't want it to show on the outside of the coil, and you don't want a bunch of like, you don't want it to show up on this edge that is visible in your finished piece. It takes very little glue to do this hobby. Thanks for joining. This is the cross that we're going to be making. So what I'm making right now are these little circles that I put jewels on, and then we're going to make the rest of these and then put it together. So this requires 9 lengths of paper, and they're cut in half. So we're making a total of 18 tight coils. And this will be our last tight coil. And then we're going to be moving on to the larger circles. And those are open coils that we're going to be making. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the 9 number 2 circles. And when I talk about the numbers, I have this little, it's from Quill Creations, circle sizer, and each one has numbers on it. So I'm going to be using the number 2 circle right here. So we're going to make 9 of those. And what I'm going to do is count out my paper, so I just have them ready to go. So there's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that'll be our 9 number 2 circles. There is a battery operated coiler that makes this much faster. Mine just broke and I have new ones coming in the mail today. Makes this process a lot faster. But I've got orders to get done, so we're just doing what we gotta do. Okay, so once you get your tight coil like this, you lay it in that circle, and it's got a little ridge so it'll catch that coil. And you just let it uncoil until it's the size of the circle. And then what I do is I take my tweezers and find the end of it, and I just pick it up that way to hold it together, and then glue that little end down. Okay, so this gives you can see how that's an open coil. Now we're going to turn these into teardrops. So to do that, I take where that end I glued is here, and I pinch that end, and that creates a teardrop. So we need 9 of these. So we're going to make 9 teardrops. Welcome to the live. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section, and I'll try to answer them for you. Thanks for joining the live. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. I'll try to get you answered. Thank you. What we're making is a cross today, like this. Thanks for joining today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask it in the chat and I'll try to get you answered. to find the end of that and pick it up so that it doesn't come all the way uncoiled when you pick it up. The purpose of using the circles is so that it keeps things uniform. So when you're putting them together in a pattern like that, you don't have something that's bigger than other stuff, and it stays symmetrical that way. If you get really good at this, you can do it by eye. I see a lot of people do that, and I see a lot of people fold this paper the traditional way by hand. But because I make so many things for people, I like to have the speed of the battery operated coiler instead. And I'm not great at making sure they're all uniform, so I use I don't know if you want to call them cheat tools or just tools, but I use those to keep everything uniform because I'm not good at doing it just myself. Hi everyone, thanks for joining the live today. We're making a cross. I know I keep showing this if you're watching the replay, but it's because new people are joining and I want them to know what we're working on so they understand. So we've already made our 9 number 2 circles. That's these right here. We turned them into teardrops. And I started by making the 18 coils. That's these little tight coils. And then right now I'm making the 4 number 2 circles into marquees. So we've got 3 of those done. This is the last one of these. And then we have 20 number 3 circles to make, and those are also going to be marquees. When you're playing with paper like this, you want to make sure that your hands are clean because you are rubbing on it. And periodically wash your hands in between because you get glue and the glue picks up stuff. So to keep your pieces nice, for me, I like to stop and wash my hands quite often. Okay, now we're going to move on to this 20 number 3 circles, and we're making the same marquee shape. They're just a little smaller. So in this piece we have the 4 larger ones, and then these are all the littler marquees out here. And this is with a full length strip of paper. Thanks for joining. We are making a cross today like this. And I've got about 4 more coils to do, and then we're going to start building the cross. So what I'm doing is rolling these into a tight coil, and then I have the recipe down here for this cross. So we've already made these 18 coils. We've already done these 4 number 2s, 9 number 2s. And right now we're at the last part of the 20 number 3 circles. So we're just creating these, the last of these shapes, and then we'll start building the cross. If you're going to make one of these yourself, I suggest that you get a piece of cork or a cardboard box. Works good. That's what I'm using. And I cover it with wax paper, because there's so many pieces to this cross. We're going to use sewing pins to stick them together so they don't move until the glue is dry. And the wax paper helps keep it from sticking to cardboard or anything else that you don't want it to stick to. It's easy to pop it off once it's dry. The glue that we're using is just Elmer School glue. And I got this little bottle on Etsy, which has a very tiny dispenser top. And it helps keep the glue to a minimum, because in this craft we do use glue on everything, but very little of it. That little bottle of glue will last me probably a year to a year and a half. And I'm just using this coiling tool to create these little coils, and then I'm using my little coil ruler to create an even size on all these pieces so that they match up perfectly when we're building the cross. So we're getting down there. I got one more to do after this, and then we get to start the exciting part. I'm doing this live today so that you can just hang out and watch, but also timing myself to see how long it takes to build one, because I have these for sale on my Etsy channel, and I just want to make sure that the time it takes me is completely covered. So I'm sitting down and doing one from beginning to end, which is not typically how I do it. I usually will start something and bounce to another project for a while and come back. So I just want to time myself. So it looks like it took me about 50 minutes to create all the pieces to this. The only thing I did prior to the video, which isn't required, is I set and counted out each of the parts so I wouldn't have to count them on the live. So about 50 minutes to make all of this part, and then we'll continue the live building the cross and see how long it takes to get it from start to finish. Okay, so we're done with that ruler. I'm going to leave that there just for a second if anybody wants to screenshot it for the numbers that you need. And again, this number 2, number 3, that's based on this Quilled Creations little ruler. If you're using a different kind, a lot of them don't have these numbers on them. They have actual measurements. So let's give you those real quick. So this number 3 one, let's see, the easiest way is here. So it's slightly over 1/2 inch for that size. For this number 4, you're right at 3/4 inch. And then the teardrop will be the same because it's made with that same number 2. So it's right at 3/4 inch. And then the tight little coils, these little guys are done with a 1/2 length of paper. Okay, so I'm going to move that out of the way, and we're going to bring in our box that we use Again, this is just a piece of cardboard, and I use it because the sewing pins will push into it very easily, and I cover it with wax paper so that if glue does get on it, it won't stick to the piece. I'm just kind of adjusting this so that that's laying in there right. And we're just using regular sewing pins. And that's how we're going to put this down. So to get started, we need one of these little center pieces. And what I like to do is go ahead and secure that to start with, right to the box. And then everything we do next is going to glue to that. So the first thing we need are the 4 larger marquees. I'm just sorting them out here. Hang on. When I pushed them over here, I mixed them all up, so I'm looking for them all. Okay. And I try to handle these as much as possible with my tweezers, because this is where we're going to get into the glue, and I don't want it to get messy, and especially where this is a white piece, we don't want it to discolor it. So the very first thing we do is these are off the corners. They're not straight up and down. These teardrops are the ones that are straight up and down. So we're going to pull all of those in. Make sure you can see that. So our marquees are at a diagonal, and the teardrops are the cross, the basis for the cross. So we're going to pull all these up here. And for these to fit on here, I'm doing it the long way. So we're going to just start setting stuff up. So these will be sitting at an angle like this. Just kind of get them laid out. Okay, so that kind of shows you where we're going to start gluing and pinning. So again, this uses very little glue. So we're going to just start with gluing one in place, and we're just going to put a little glue right here on the tip. Lay that down, and then I'm going to use my tweezers to put it in place. And I'm going to secure this up against that centerpiece. Don't worry about the back end of it right now. We just want to make sure that's secured across, so that makes contact, so that glue dries in the correct place. And let's get the next one across from it. A little dab of glue. And each of these we're going to secure to the center. And I'm just kind of doing this by eye because I've made a few of these, but if you're worried about not being able to center them visually, draw some lines on here for yourself, straight up and down in your diagonal lines at 45 degrees, and that should help you, you know, feel like you're getting them straight. Okay, so now we have those. You can see there's a tiny bit of room in here where these marquees are going to glue into there, but when you push it in there, see it starts moving them around, and that loses that one. That's okay, because we're going to be pinning them, and we'll start to pin things in place where they don't move like that. Another tip I like to do is, this is the end of the paper where we glued it. I like to put that tip in here where it's not seen on the other side, so that you got a clear looking thing there. Now this one, because it's going to glue here and not just here, we're going to run some glue down the side of this as well. And this is what starts to give it some structure. Okay, so we're going to push that in there. And the very first thing we're going to do is go ahead and pin that up against there, just like we did the teardrops, so that that doesn't move. And then we're going to get the second one ready. And there's our end that we're looking for. I'm going to turn this camera a little bit so you can see my hands a little bit better. Okay, so again, we're going around the side, the tip, and slightly down this side. And we're going to just move that aside and push it into place. And you can see how they want to spring back. This is why we use the pins. So we're going to push that in there and pin it so it's got good contact. And again, you can see how this one's closed. We're going to just move it aside and push this in there. So you can see you're going to have quite a few pins in the center part holding everything together. And again, I'm just looking for that little end, so I tuck it. It's always nice to have your ends tucked so you have a clean piece. And then we're going to come in here and we're just going to separate this a little bit with our fingers. And then push that into place and get it up there so it's making contact with that center. And pull it in and pin. Okay, so at this point, this is where you want to start making sure things are lined up properly. So you can see this is shifted a little bit. I'm going to physically just pull it into place where I want it. And I'm going to come out here and I'm going to put a pin here to hold that. And I think that looks pretty close to center, so I'm just going to pin it. And then we're going to go ahead and take the other two sides and get those so they feel straight. Just pull it where it needs to be pulled. Because this is your base, so everything you build off of this needs to be, you know, in line as well. So you can see right now, this is the part we just completed. Now we're going to start working on these sides. Okay, so the next thing that we need, we have some more of the teardrops. And those teardrops, you can see, so this is the ones we've done. The next teardrop, the point is in the center of the bottom teardrop. And it goes that way all the way around. So we're going to pull up one for each side here. And again, a piece of cork or cardboard covered in wax paper works really good for this. Okay, so let's go ahead and get these glued down. And again, we'll pin it so it doesn't move. And I'm going to go ahead and pin the top of this because we were wanting to keep it kind of straight. And if anything lifts up like that one just did, just push it back down. The pin will help hold it there. Just adjusting that shape because it was a little weird. A little bit of glue on the end. And line that up again. Pin it so it can't move. This part goes faster. The part where you're creating these little pieces. That's what takes a while, and it actually would go faster if you had a battery operated coiler. You can see it takes very little glue. If you get too much glue, it pushes out and gets on your paper and looks really sloppy. So this little dispenser helps keep it in check a little bit. And they're on Amazon. In fact, almost all the quilling tools you can get on Amazon. Hobby Lobby carries them. Michael's carries them. If you still have Joann's in your area, they carry them. I'm going to relieve a little pressure on it because it's causing that coil to pop up there. Okay, so you can see those are all pretty much in place. The next thing we're going to do is start adding some of these little circles. And you don't have to do this, but I like to do it. Where the circles are, I like to put some kind of little gemstone or rhinestone or something on them. But that's what these are. You can leave them just open if you want and don't put anything on them. So we're going to come in and we're going to add these and get that step done. So those go in between here on each one of these. And these are just going to take a little dab of glue and we'll stick them in place. Okay. Now these also have that little tail on them, and you can see sometimes they stick up a little bit. We don't want that to be seen, so the easiest way to handle this is put a little glue on here, and that little hole, I stick my tweezers in it, and I'm able to place that in there. And I want to make sure that that's pushed up in there so it looks nice. I hold it in place and go ahead and pin it right through the center there. So you can see that becomes very sturdy. Looking for that little end, so we tuck it so we have a nice looking piece. Stick the tweezers in there, push it in there so it's touching everywhere, and pin it. And we're just going to get each of these done. When you're working on your own, if you need to turn your cork or cardboard, go for it. Makes it a little easier to get to the other side. By pinning these also, that lets you know you haven't forgotten to glue any of them. 'Cause if they don't have a pin in it, they're not glued. Just stab myself with the tweezers. This is a paper craft, but I've never really gotten a paper cut or anything from it, so that's fun. I think I flipped one of those off. Or didn't get one up here. Oh, I see, it just moved. Okay, we got them all. And that is putting a little pressure on that just to, you know, hold it in place. It has a little tension on it, but when it glues, the glue dries, everything's solid that way so that you can handle it. These can be made into Christmas ornaments too by just putting a little loop at the top. Okay, so the next piece that we're doing is some of these smaller marquees. You can see coming off of each one, it has two on each side. and then the 2 coils again. And it's the same up to this point. This is an extra one to give it the length so that it's across. But we're going to put 2 on each side. And to do that, find your little end. If you do it really good, it's hard to locate the end. Like right here, it's right at the end, so it's harder to see. But we're going to, again, we're going to be adhering it to this side and the tip. So let's put glue down one side and make sure we get the tip. Use our tweezers and put that in place right there. And I like to place both of them before I do the pinning to make sure that I've got it set. This one's going to glue here and here. So we're going to put glue on both sides. It doesn't have to go very far up. That was a lot of glue. It doesn't have to go very far up because we're only gluing to a small surface here and here. Okay, let's go ahead and pin those in there so they keep good contact. Now, you can see how these kind of are angled a little different. This one's coming out more and that one's angled more up. I like them to look a little more up. So this one, I'm going to put some pressure on it and pin it where I want it. And then I want this one to kind of match it, so I'm going to angle it back this way. And we're going to pin it in place. So you're just kind of looking for them to be symmetrical. And then you're going to mirror that all the way around. And then right here is one of those little dots. So we'll go ahead and put that in place now. And then we'll pin it in place. Okay, and then we just keep doing this going around. Okay, so we're going to have 2 on this side. I'm going to make this one, it's a little fat, so I'm going to make it a little skinnier just by pinching the ends in the middle a little bit. That way it's a little more symmetrical with the other ones that we have. So again, we're going to put it on the tip, just down the side a little bit. Push that right in there. And this one around both sides. And we're just going to pin them. And get one of these little circles in place. Well, you can see that went horribly awry. So use your tweezers. And then you just continue around and keep doing the same pattern. As I'm doing this, I'm just trying to make sure it's symmetrical with the other side and pretty even so it looks right. I see my pattern's off and I missed one of these, so now we have to deal with that. Okay, now that can go in there. Okay, and then we're coming around to the last one here. Okay, now we need to put this last section on here. So we're gonna add another section like this. That's basically what we're gonna do here. And I miscounted, so I'm gonna have to make a couple more things here. But let's get these glued in place and then we'll do that. So we're gonna try to get that right in the center. So I need to make 2 more of this, the little marquees. And I'm going to do that off camera so that we can get this ended. But basically, you'd have your other 2 small marquees, just like you have up here. And then your last 2 dots. And that's how you finish this out. Then when you go to take it off, give it about an hour or so, let your glue dry. And if you just take, I use the end of the tweezers and I just lightly push underneath and it'll pop it off the wax paper. And then if you're going to put it on a card, you can glue it directly to the card. If you want to use it as a Christmas ornament, you can add a open circle up here. So let it start a circle and then let it open just a little bit. Or coil it by hand, however you want to do it to get this little top part. That gives you a place to hang a Christmas ornament. In this case, I'm putting a Christmas ornament on a card, so I did it with double stick tape. That way, whoever gets this and wants to use it as an ornament can pop it off. Or if they don't, they can frame the card, because each of these is, a little bit of a piece of art. People don't throw the cards away. They always keep them. Another way that I do it is sometimes I put it on a piece of, this is handmade parchment paper, and I double stick that to the card so that this piece right here fits perfect in a 5x7 frame. It's 4x6, and I use shadow boxes, and it gives it half an inch around each edge. It looks really nice in a shadow box, and people will keep your cards that way. If you are going to use it as a Christmas ornament, you might want to consider spraying it. And what I use is, I find it on Amazon. It's a clear spray. It's non-yellowing. And I just hang this up from a wire. And I just spray the heck out of it before I put my embellishments on it. Let it dry for a couple hours, and it makes this paper rigid, and it helps hold these coils in place. Definitely color test before you spray. I know that my papers don't run, but you want to make sure that you're color testing prior, because you'd hate to do a piece and then ruin it. But that gives it some rigidity, so if you are using it on a tree or gonna have it out where it's not behind like a shadow box glass so that dust gets on it, can't get on it and stuff like that, you may want to consider spraying it. The purpose of doing this was to time myself. We're at an hour 24, and I need to make these 2 more marquees to finish this one out. So I'm gonna call it about an hour and a half it takes to make one of these. It may take longer your first time because you may or may not be an experienced quiller and not you know, if you're not experienced, it may take a little longer. The other thing that can make it quicker is, again, using the battery powered coiler. I think that probably takes a good, cuts your prep time in half by probably half. So I bet you could get one of these done in about an hour with that battery powered coiler. If you have any questions, feel free to comment on this and I will get back to you. Everything I make, I usually have on my Etsy store. Go look up crafts with Shauna D, spelled SHANNAD, and you can see what I have for sale on there. I do a few custom orders, but for the most part, I make what I want to make and then I post it for sale on Etsy. With the exception of, I do love doing names for people, and that is one of the listings on Etsy. So I do custom names. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate all of you guys, and I hope you have a good day.